And a very warm welcome to all of you. Mike Cavalli here, and in conversation with me today is my very special friend and guest, Richard G. Hopf. And we are going to be talking amongst many things, but hopefully I'm going to try and restrict it to three things, and that is remote viewing, Sidereal or Sidereal time, and binaural beats. Now, Richard is a developer, so he's developed this app for meditation to help open your consciousness, change our brain frequency, I believe, in order to allow a better flow of the information from the field. I'm sure he's going to put that in a better way. We're going to look at sidereal time. What is it? How do we benefit from it? Does it make any difference to us? And finally, well, I think we're going to have to take a good look at remote viewing. Richard is an expert remote viewer. He's got his own platform, and no doubt we're going to use this time here to recruit some new members to the remote viewing. So look, without further delay, let's go over and say hello to Richard. Richard, how are you today?
Hi. Hi, thanks for being on.
You're welcome. Richard, before we start with all of this, I always like to give the viewers a little bit of a backdrop on how you come to be where you are, because your work really is very analytical. Although it's creative, it's quite analytical, so therefore you have to use your left brain quite a lot. But when we move over to this other type of work that we're doing, and when you're in the spirit communication circle and remote viewing, this analysing is a disaster when you're trying to connect with the field and the energy. So at some point, you've had to have switched over and accept that the right brain model. So how did this kind of all happen for you?
Yeah, right. As with many other peoples and stories you're probably familiar with, it started in early childhood. I was a single boy of a mother. She was divorced, and I was raised by my grandparents, so I had a lot of time for myself. Being with myself, I had a lot of time experiencing the world from my point of view, let's say. And so I learned that, let's say, my reality, by the time I learned that my reality is a little bit different from other people's reality. And, by time becoming a teenager, you stop your personal reality and you adjust to other people's realities, to the common reality we'll share. What I learned in this time as a child was that what I perceive with my senses, the typical five senses, is not everything. There's much more to be sensed. For me, it was normal. I just by the time not used it anymore.
Right.
And today I'm over 50, and let's say a year ago, I was just rethinking situations in my youth and tried to compare this with the Richard of today. So I tried to compare the young Richard of, let's say, 5 years age, and the one now. And there are some differences, I hope. But most important for me is there still a sense into a reality that is not the common reality? And I learned about remote viewing, and I learned about the consciousness, and I saw a lot of interviews of others, people of good names, and I realized it's still there, it's still working.
Right.
I've just to meditate, to concentrate, to separate myself from the existing reality, and then the information just drops in.
Right.
The only difficult thing is to control this. What remote viewers are doing is setting an intention of wanting to know something, but not bringing your own, what people say, the monkey mind into this solution. And this is the most tricky part, I would say. You
Yeah.
remember it for yourself.
Yeah.
I can remember a lot of discussions where we were both laughing about ourselves,
Yeah.
because anything we do not know, what our mind is not instantly recognizing, which means it doesn't fit in the mind is not comfortable with this and tries to
Right.
work around it,
Right.
and tries to come up with ideas, solutions, interpretations, and you have to separate yourself from this. And this is the most tricky part.
Right.
Um,
Because but the work that let's say we do with remote
mm,
viewing is really quite emotional stuff. We're not looking usually at esoteric stuff. We're looking at missing people, humans and with emotions. Do you find that that gets in the way, or can you actually switch that off? Because as a medium, when I'm giving a reading, if I see the person in front of me that's really quite emotional and upset,
mm,
it sounds harsh, but I have to detach myself from that. Otherwise, I lose the link.
mm,
I get this
right.
earthly emotion. So, do you consciously say, right, I am not going to make any emotional attachment to the outcome of this. I'm just going to view it and take it for what it is.
I mean, I understand the Americans and their structured RV, what they call,
Yeah,
developed by CIA and so forth. The the sense, let's put it that way. There's a paper coming out this year from Stanford. It's from Dr. Gary Nolan, and he's hypothesizing on the cartea putamen. It's a part of our brain which is most probably the antenna for transceiving and receiving information.
right.
The thing is, though, this complex of brain structures is also involved in emotional feelings. So what they recognized on their MRI scans, brain scans during meditation and so forth, they recognized that any emotional experience is very much reflected in this area, the cartea putamen,
Right,
which is directly between your ears, you could say,
right,
directly in the center of your brain.
right,
Um, this means that this part is in charge of emotions, but also emotions can activate this part. You
right.
can activate this antenna. It's like putting more energy into a radio station.
Okay.
So you can't do it like the Americans do on this SRV philosophy or protocol, they call it,
Hmm.
without any emotion. But I think it's more easy to attach to a case if you have an emotional attachment to it.
Right.
The emotional attachment comes from a picture, for example. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you see a person, you get a lot of information, not just the two-dimensional image,
Sure.
but you are learned and trained to read a person's image just because we did it since our lifetime. And this attaches someone to
Yeah.
this person.
Yeah.
And if there's a case behind, a question behind, that means that you make this case yours.
Right.
It
Yeah.
attaches to you.
Yeah.
And by this attachment, it produces more significant outcomes, in my opinion, than the total standardized, unemotional attachment, like the SRV
Yeah.
people in America do.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think at this stage it might be an idea to explain uh, what the procedure is. That you're given a set of coordinates
Yeah,
of a target, and we don't know the target, what the target is. But if you want to take it up from there, because the person who has written those coordinates, it's better for them to meditate, focus on the subject, and that energy is hooked into the coordinates. So if you could take that up from the beginning, let's talk about the procedure from
yeah,
beginning to end. That would be
yeah.
a good idea, and then hopefully you might be able to recruit some new members. So, yeah,
So my first point is remote viewing is not something special in certain people. It's like playing music. Everyone can play music. Some do better, some not so good.
Yeah.
But anyway, everyone can make music, so anyone can remote view because the antenna for transceiving and receiving information is still there.
Mm.
The question is how do you work with it? How do you use it personally as a human being? The thing is, there's information in people call it the quantum field, the ether. There are 1,000 names for it because we're just not convinced on any subject. It's just everyone names it differently, but let's call it the field for you, for simpleness. While you concentrate and meditate, you get this information automatically in your brain. You receive it. It's just turn on the radio and you can't block a radio signal from coming in. It's just there.
Yeah.
The thing is, I think this is just hypothesis. There are people talking about the kaleidoscopic or how do you call this, where every information is in every little bit.
Holographic.
Holographic, thank you. Holographic, yeah. It has to be some kind of holographic because holographic means that it is not bound to our 3D environment. It is non-local and non-temporal.
Yeah.
So I think that this field is of a higher dimension and our antennas can just reach into this higher dimension.
Mm.
It's not esoteric, it's just pure physics, I would say. So you can't get information from this field, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
But this is holographic, which means you have to filter by yourself. So how do you filter? Because I want to meditate and I get a kaleidoscopic information, so millions of images are received.
Yeah.
And this is too much. So how do you slice that or filter that and just to get the ones that you are interested in? And this comes, what the Stanford and CIA did develop by intention focusing. So as a remote viewer, you make a meditation, but before you go into a meditation, you start with a strong intention setting in yourself. That means that you can control yourself in a way that you say, I really want to know a particular case, about a particular case. And the stronger you set your own intention for knowing this, the better the filter works on this holographic information that comes in. And suddenly only those images or information is filtered out, and suddenly only the filtered out information is coming to you.
Right.
And you recognize it, you see it, you hear it, you feel it, you can... You see colors, you hear tones, you even feel emotions of persons, of entities that are involved.
Right.
And one of the most critical, coming back to your question, one of the most critical part is either I sit by myself and have my own target, knowing about it, having a picture on the table, for example, which is not blind, because I'm not blind, I see it, I can attach myself to, I can emotionally attach myself to. But the Americans do it in this anonymous way, let's say.
Yeah.
They write down, for a particular case, they write down, they call it a coordinate, it's just some ciphers. Mm-hmm. Most of the time they use 8 ciphers. And then they hand it over to a remote viewer. And the remote viewer takes the 8 ciphers, then goes into meditation, and then the process should work that with his intention for knowing what's behind the cipher, the information is filtered backwards. From my point of view, this only works if this so-called coordinate is really attached with the case you were looking for.
Right.
I think this is the most crucial part in it, and I think I get the belief that most of the remote viewing actions that are taken by people are not that positive or not that with a good outcome, or disappoint the questioner because there's no real good attachment. So let's make it simple. A remote viewer should have someone let's call him a handler, someone who handles a remote viewer. So the handler gives a case to the remote viewer by only telling a number.
Yeah.
So the remote viewer picks up the number, which is written on a piece of paper, then goes into meditation and tries to filter due to this number. But in case that the handler did not connect the case, the question, with this cipher number, with this abstract number, the remote viewer is not able to pick up the information because the information has to be set into this field so that the remote viewer is picking that filter up.
Right.
Otherwise, it would be just magic, and there's no magic involved here.
No.
There's no esoteric, no magic involved here. So if there is a good handler, I give you an example, and I know you already know about those people. For example, the Farsight Institute, which are extremely good remote viewers in play. Their handler is Courtney Brown. Courtney Brown is trained by the CIA and SRI, and he's a very capable remote viewer by himself, and he knows how to set those coordinates. So in one interview I heard him saying, the most important part of his is to meditate and to bring a certain number that he writes down. It's just a random number, but he connects, in his meditation, he connects that number with the question he wants to be answered.
Right.
If he does it well, another remote viewer on the other side of the planet, just knowing about this number, can now ask, under citation, can ask the field for the real filtered information based on that cipher, based on what the handler connected with.
Right. Yeah.
So that's in part very, very easy to say. It's tricky to do.
Yeah. I mean, for example, if I were to have a picture and I just write down a set of coordinates and say, there you are, that's the coordinates, it wouldn't be effective because I haven't programmed with real intention the picture into those coordinates.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And this is where a lot of remote viewing fails.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. And so what would be the procedure? For me, I've seen a lot of remote view online schools, and they are the American ones, and they're too dogmatic for me. They're too bogged down in procedure. But I did take some advice from Prue. Can't remember her second.
Prudence Calabresi.
Yeah. And I found it effective that if I did do it standing up and when I was tired, because my brain wants to, it has to keep telling my legs, stand up or you'll fall down. And that leaves the other part of my brain free to grab the information. And I can write about 8 pages of text and drawings. This is my technique. Is yours similar, or do you have to do it when you're not tired, when you are awake and alert?
Basically, it's always good to distract the monkey mind.
Yeah.
If the monkey mind is not in play and there is no interpretation of the information, you just act as a receiver, act as a TV screen, a blank, stupid TV screen, then this is the best outcome.
Yeah. Okay.
So anytime you are messed up with, if you are working a whole day and then try to meditate, that won't work.
Right.
Because your brain is still running what happened on the day and it's still trying to process loose ends and so forth. So what the people developed some techniques to do so. For example, if you stand up and have your eyes open. So that means that your brain is receiving information via your eyes, and your part of the brain that is in charge of your body behavior, standing, going, sitting, running, and so forth. We call it the little brain in German. I don't know what's the exact scientific name of it, but it means that you let this part of the brain consume some energy.
Right.
It is busy with keeping you standing or staring at a wall, for example, without any real information coming, no changes in the environment. What's most important I think, is there should not be a change in the environment. There should not be a music. There shouldn't be other people talking. There shouldn't be pets running around. This is a real distraction.
Yeah.
But if you just a static information set that is permanently perceived by your normal five senses consumes them that much that it is quite enough for a good meditation state, let's say.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and also the top remote viewers at Farsight Institute, they actually just draw objects and shapes. They don't necessarily identify this is a house or this is a ladder. It's just the shape and the design and the structure that they're identifying. Again, I think this is our monkey brain that wants to create a story. I've noticed with new remote viewers, when we give them the coordinates and they're trying to find out what it is, they create this whole story. I see a house, it's got two windows, there's a chimney here, there's a tree here, it's a white door with remote viewing. Is it fair to say that we don't need that kind of detail?
No, I wouldn't say you wouldn't need it. It's always interesting to have, but the thing is, our monkey mind is so easily distracted. You have to imagine, you get kaleidoscopic images. Sometimes this image change in milliseconds. Tuck, 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 tuck. And your brain is interpreting what it's getting. And if there is something that is easy interpretable, that would be the solution. And suddenly your mouth speaks out what the mind thinks it has seen.
Right, yeah.
So the question is now how to get rid of this thinking, this permanent interpretation. And what they found on the SRI is that if you start with the so-called gestalts, with the forms of it, you concentrate only on the visual form without the content itself. Just let's say there is a structure, there's open land, there's a body of water, something like this. This is very abstract. And this does not distort yourself.
No.
So if you keep yourself while doing remote viewing in a state, I just want to see the gestalts only in the first step, then, and if you really filter according to this, and then you get an impression, let's say an environment, a surrounding. There is a structure, there is an environment, there's a body of water, something, there are hilly structure in the background. The next step would be, okay, now I'm satisfied that this is not a picture that my monkey mind came up with, digging from old experiencing or whatever. But if you get the feeling, this situation is new to me, I never saw a structure like this, or the combination of structures like I can't recall. And then you can go deeper, and then you see, oh, this is really a building. It's a skyscraper, for example, next to 5 other little smaller buildings. And then you can go deeper, because then you're already set with, satisfyingly set in yourself. You're convinced that this is a correct vision that you get, and not something that your mind made up. And then you can go deeper and make more get more data points out of it. You can even control yourself. I mean, it would be much more easier, from my own experience, especially with you, is if the handler is a person sitting next to you and asking questions. Because then you don't have to think about the next step. You're just repeating as a stupid TV screen. But if you don't have a handler and sit by yourself, then you can make a little stop after you received information, make a scribble, and then set for yourself a new intention. Oh, I want to go deeper into that building, for example. I want to know, is it a skyscraper? Where is it? Is it in China? Is it in Russia? And so forth. And then you have to concentrate, And then you don't need this cipher anymore, this abstract random number anymore,
Right.
because now you are attached, because you already made your own scribble on a paper, and then you attach yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and from that point, you go on and on and on.
Yeah. And of course, thanks to modern technology now, we have Google Earth that we can do some checks with. And I find that's amazing. We did the one case, I can't think of her name, but Sasha. And I think there was three of us that did this, come up with a common denominator. And so this is why numbers are important. The more numbers we have as remote viewers, the bigger common denominator that we can find that gives us a better chance of being accurate. Is that a fair statement?
You're talking about overlaps?
Yeah.
Yeah, especially that one. If you have more than one remote viewer on a case, let's say 3, 4, 5, and of course we are human beings. Everyone has his good days, bad days. We all work the same. We're not machines. And if you get 5 results of remote viewing, then you can compare them and see, are there overlaps? If there are overlaps, it's a very good hint that could be true. If there is on certain areas no overlap, I would put a question mark on it.
Right. Okay.
But still, it can be true. We are not machines, and we are biological radio receiver transmitters.
Right. Well, talking of good days and bad days, this is where sidereal time comes into play. Tell us a bit about this, because this is the best time really to be doing this type of work.
Yeah, sidereal time. I read about sidereal time a year ago. In the late 60s, there was the SRI Institute. I mean, it's still there, Stanford Research Institute. And people who were working there were Hal Puthoff, Russell Turk, Ingo Swann, and all other remote viewers and people who were involved in this. And they produced a lot of data. So they had a stockpile of remote viewers with cases. Years later, somewhere in the late 70s, let's say 10 years later, another researcher was taking up these cases and worked them through. And he found out, and he made a correlation between the quality of the outcome and the time of the day when that took place, that remote viewing session took place. So he made a correlation between time and the quality of the outcome. And what he found out is there's always a particular time of the day, it's around 1 hour in time, that you have much more better outcomes than on the rest of the day.
Right. Intuitively, would you say? Is this...
No, the question is not because of intuition. It's if you compare the outcomes and you qualify them and say, okay, I have several hundred outcomes and I qualify them, then there's a good outcome, there's a bad outcome, any range in between. And then you point the time when it took place, the viewing itself, when it took place, and you bring this in a spread.
Right.
You recognize that around a particular time of the day, the results are much better than of the rest of the day.
Right.
And the difference is really significant. It's a 4 times significance. It's a 1 to 4 times more better outcomes than of the rest of the day in just 1 hour.
Right.
So which hour is it?
Right. Yeah.
And he found out it's not always the same hour. So this made it very confusing. And this researcher then had a friend. There's a funny story. They went out for a drink and they had a chat. And the other one was an astronomer.
Right.
And the astronomer found out that this particular time of the day, this so-called 1 hour, is shifting like what astronomers call the sidereal time.
Right.
So sidereal time is an invention from astronomers.
Right.
Because we have astronomers all over our globe. So 24 hours around the globe, we have astronomers doing their search into the universe. And they have all their time zones. One is in America, one is in Europe, one is in Australia. But to communicate more easily on time events, they developed a sidereal time, which means this is our galactic time.
Right.
It's a 24 hours, but not 23.6.
Yes, about
We
4
have,
seconds short of.
we have to compensate permanently.
Yeah.
The sidereal time is a galactic time zone, let's say,
Yeah.
and it is a 24 hours, perfect 24 hours time zone. And so if an Australian astronomer talks with an American astronomer and both talk about 3 o'clock sidereal time, there's an event at that horizon in the sky somewhere, then they both know what the local time will be.
Right.
So they just calculate back from sidereal time to the local time. So astronomers around our globe talk about events, astronomical events, by stating them with sidereal time. So what the astronomer chatting in this pub with this Stanford researcher found out is that there's a shift.
Mm-hmm.
Sidereal time is shifting every week about half an hour.
Right. Wow.
It's just because the Earth is rotating around the sun, our solar system is rotating in the spiral arm of the galaxy, and this combination of several spirals results in a time shift, which means sidereal time is not a fixed time. So if today sidereal time, I have to look it up now, sidereal time would be, just give me a sec, bear with me. Is 1:35 a.m. So that means 1:30 in the night.
Right. Okay.
It's now sidereal time. Today, now we have 3:30 in Europe.
Yeah.
In sidereal time, it's 1:30 a.m.
Okay.
So this is the relation between European time, Central European time, and sidereal time. Is now the difference in 14 hours roundabout today, this week. Next week, it will be 14 and a half hours. In 2 weeks, it will be 15 hours, and so on. So the sidereal time shifts ahead.
Okay.
But the researcher then found out that the so-called sidereal time 1330 is the one where all remote viewing outcomes are on their most highest peak.
Interesting.
4 times higher than the rest. I've got a graphic, if I can share with you if you want to.
Mm-hmm.
Let me share this. Okay, do you see the graph?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a 24-hour scale in sidereal time, and we're talking about 1330 sidereal time. Can you see my mouse move?
I've just got to move. Oh, yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
Here in the middle, right in the middle.
Yeah.
Here's the peak. Here is the big peak.
Yeah.
So this is every day at 1330 sidereal time, you've got this peak.
Right.
So, for example, if you're at 18 o'clock sidereal time doing a meditation,
Yeah.
you would be below an average, far below an average.
Right.
So this is very far below the average.
Right.
I would recommend, if you do a meditation, you want a remote view, that you concentrate around about the 1330 sidereal time.
Right.
Which is today, let me calculate, 2 hours ahead, which is 23:30, a half past 11 p.m.
Tonight. Yeah.
Tonight.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. And so does this also help with our intuition? Not necessarily for you being a psychic. We're all psychic. Rather than not so much using your psychic ability, but just in your everyday life, if you are aware that this time is going to be more effective to you, and I think you have to be aware of it for it to kick in.
Mm.
What other benefits do we get from this, or there really isn't? It's really just an
Yeah,
astronomy
good
thing.
question. Good question. What is it? What does it mean, actually? That's the question.
Yeah,
What does it mean, sidereal time?
yeah,
Sidereal time 1330 means that your position on Earth is on the opposite side towards the center of the galaxy.
right.
Okay? So the Earth is turning.
Yeah. So the Earth isn't flat.
Yeah, the Earth is not flat, okay? Sorry, flat Earthers. Doesn't work.
That was a little private joke with me and Richard. God.
So consider the Earth is rotating,
Yeah,
and you have on the far distance, you have the center of the Milky Way.
yeah,
So then on the opposite side of the Earth, there's always sidereal time 1330.
right.
The Earth is shifting, is rotating,
Yeah,
and so is the time zone.
right,
And so is our local time when it is 1330.
right.
Because if it's 1330 here and the world turns and the sidereal time 1330 stays,
Yeah,
it moves. So anytime, and depends where you are, you have
yeah,
a different time, local time.
yeah,
But 1330 sidereal time is always the same.
right.
So the question is now, why? Why is it so?
Yeah,
Why is it so that the Earth is shielding us if we sit here and the center of the galaxy is far, far away? If the Earth is shielding ourselves from whatever is coming from the center of the galaxy in a way so that our psychic ability is 4 times higher than the rest of the day.
right.
So if you're sitting here and the Earth turns and your your psychic ability is high, let's say 400%, then it goes down to 300, 200, 100%. Then you're at 100%, and then you're in the backside again on 400%.
Right.
And then when the world turns.
Yeah,
The resulting question is, what is it in the center of the galaxy that has to be shadowed by the Earth body so that you have a higher psychic ability than of the rest of the day?
right.
What is it?
Hmm.
No idea.
Well, the Finnish people have a higher rate per rata of psychics than any other country
Oh, yeah.
because the magnetic field is at its weakest at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe this is to do with the magnetic field. This is why Kozyrev's mirror works effectively, because the curvature of this mirror, how it's constructed, deflects the magnetic field, and people that sit in Kozyrev's mirror have a really first class psychic experience,
Mm-hmm.
to the point that if you have Kozyrev's mirror built correctly, it doesn't go away. You're stuck with that ability now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it could be it's the magnetic field that is disturbing or creating the psychic ability.
It could. We just have left too few data to
Yeah,
collaborate on that.
yeah,
The Cosimev's mirror has two functions in my point of view. The one is that you are reducing all your senses. It's like sitting in a water tank.
yeah,
You don't have any senses from your five
yeah,
senses. And for second, it shields off a radiation,
hmm,
a gravitational wave. I wouldn't go for a gravitational wave because this would not shield. The question is, what does it shield?
mm,
There are a lot of speculations what it is really shielding.
yeah.
You can even go to a saying that tinfoil hatters, people who put their tinfoils on their head, are correct.
No, don't start on my friends now, Richard. Okay.
But on the other hand, you can ask yourself, why is a helmet of metal
Yeah,
so interesting?
yeah,
Why did priests, high priests, wear helmets?
yeah.
in ancient times. I can recall ancient Egyptian depictings of priests, high priests with a golden helmet.
Yeah.
Why does a priest necessarily have to wear a helmet? He's not a military. I think gold makes sense because gold is a very inert material.
Yeah.
It can shield very, very well.
Yeah.
The question is, what in particular is it shielding off?
Yeah.
You could say then, if you make a meditation and you want a remote view, pick up your helmet,
Yeah.
your golden helmet.
Right.
You should still be able to receive information from the field, and maybe it shields off whatever is coming from the center of our galaxy.
Yeah.
This is all pure speculation.
Sure. Sure.
We
But
just don't know yet.
but we have another tool up our sleeve in the sense of we have Binaural Beats, this app that you've developed. This is, I guess, helps expand our consciousness. It changes or allows us to get into a different frequency in the brain. Explain what it is that you've done here. What have you developed?
Yeah, before I talk about the binaural beats, and this is just an app that I did, and there are 50 other apps in the world that do the same. So this is not something quite new. Actually, it was developed by the Monroe Institute.
Oh, okay.
Where they set people in a chair and put on headsets, and they send different tones to the left and the right ear that are mostly cancelled out in the center of the brain, but a certain frequency remains as a standing wave, and that's the so-called signal frequency they wanted to induce into the brain. The theory behind is that what you hear as a sound wave from your headset is it's a physical sound wave that is running through your brain, and the remaining frequency is still in the middle, has still some energy left.
Right.
And now comes the Cartea putamen part of our brain again into play, where Dr. Nolan from Stanford found out that there's a correlation between the number of antennae between the Cartea and the putamen is in high relation to psychic ability. So the more antennae a person has between the Cartea and the putamen, the higher the person's ability is.
Okay.
So this means there's a physical antenna stuff inside our brain, and if you put energy on a certain frequency onto it, it can come into resonation. Right. Especially with frequencies that are already in play. For example, if you do a meditation and you go down into the theta state, where you have frequencies of your brain between 4 to 7 hertz, and you send the tones on the left and the right ear, so that a standing wave signal is remaining in the center of your brain.
That's
let's say
the
4 hertz.
Is that the carrier wave?
No, the carrier wave is the ones, for example, you put in 100 hertz here and 104 hertz here.
Yeah.
The so-called 100 in average cancels it out, right, and 4 hertz remain. Right. And the energy of the 4 hertz remain in the center as a standing wave, because you always feed in more and more waves. Then it can resonate with the antenna between the Cartea and the putamen. And when you do this during a meditation state, where you intentionally go down into the theta state, where your brain is vibrating between 4 and 7 hertz, then this additional signal from the outside, this 4 hertz, can resonate with what your brain is already doing, resulting in a higher state of meditation, a longer state into the theta phase, and from that resulting better results in remote viewing, better results in whatever people do with the psychic abilities, healing others or whatever, finding out. I did some tests. I have this headband, this EEG headband,
Yeah.
Muse 2. I used my app, smartphone, and my earplugs, and I went into meditation. And with the headband, I can screen my meditation. I can review it afterwards. And what I found out is that it doubles my time, my theta time.
Wow.
Yeah. And by this, it gives me more time to concentrate on a case, let's say, by remote viewing or whatever.
Wow. Okay.
So you could say binaural beats do enhance people's meditation states and enhances, for example, remote viewing outcomes.
Okay. So we kind of run out of time, but where can people download the app first of all?
There are, I mean, first of all, there are 50, 60 binaural beat apps
Right.
in every store, in iTunes Store as well as in
Yeah.
Google Play Store.
Right.
Mine is one of the newest ones because I just put it up 2 weeks ago. The difference to others is that it is not that complicated than the others. It's
Right.
also called binaural beats, so just
Right.
look for binaural beats. Mine is the violet one with the orange bee
Right.
as an icon.
Right.
The difference is there are not much differences. I would say mine is more easy to play with.
Yeah.
It has more. It has less presets, let's say. Others have presets for what they wanted to do without giving you the option to use a slider, for example, to adjust on the frequencies to your own purposes, or because every person is different.
Sure. Sure.
So you can't say if 4 hertz theta 4 hertz is perfect for everyone. No, maybe for you it's 5, maybe for the other it's 6. So you have to adjust yourself.
Sure.
And other apps don't give this possibility. And there are other apps that are so complicated. You have 1,000 things that you can do, and it's too complicated. So I try to keep mine as simple as possible and
Right.
to focus just on the needs of people.
Okay. And the remote viewing, more members required, or what's the thing
And
there?
we're running a group. We're just 6 people now in this group. Let's say 4 of these people are active, 2 are not so active. So we're looking for more members. We do our work on a weekly basis, let's say. So the idea is that we find a case every week, and everyone is doing his remote or her remote viewing at home, and then contribute via. We use the app Slack, because Slack gives the opportunity on every platform to contribute and to share and to chat and doing anything. So after a week of contributions, we summarize, and either we make a report and send to whoever is concerned of, or just doing it for our own training or feedback sessions. And still, we are looking for people who are capable, who are interested in, and for people who want to invest some energy in this. It's not something that you can do just 5 minutes a day or so. So let's say if you have to invest 2 to 4 hours a week, then you are a good candidate, let's say.
Yeah. Good. Okay.
And no question about the quality of the people, because what we realized, and I have to talk to you and say what you are already saying, and me, everyone can do it.
Yeah.
It's just a question of how trained are you, how aware are you of it, and trained in a way not to fall into traps, but to know how to navigate through.
Yeah.
It's not complicated. Everyone can do it.
And I guess if there's somebody new, then you can guide them through the process, or I can guide them through my process. Yeah. Okay.
It's
Good.
not something that you can describe in 1 hour.
No.
Everyone.
No. And there's a lot of stuff on YouTube people can take a look at first. The far site would be a good place to start, just to see the actual what it is remote viewing actually is. Actually see it there physically going on, and then decide if they'd like to join us. It'd be great if we have more members. Then we can really check these overlaps, because I think that's the key. The overlaps. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Richard, lovely talking to you.
Thank you, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Well, next time we'll do this down the line, and we'll dedicate a whole show to a subject rather than just going through 2 or 3 like we did today.
All right.
And get into it deeply.
All right. We'll be happy to contribute.
Okay.